I heard metal scraping under the weight of garbage. Then I saw a paw pushing through the bars. A white paw, small, trembling, jammed between the twisted wires of a rusted dog crate, half buried beneath a collapsed pile of black trash bags. The Fresno sun beat down hard on the landfill, turning the air thick with the stench of rot and diesel. But all I could focus on was that single paw, twitching like it had one last signal left to send. I dropped the shovel. I was on shift at the Southside landfill just outside Fresno, California. Another Thursday, another run hauling furniture scraps, broken drywall, spoiled leftovers. Nothing new until that sound. Not like rats, not like birds. This was this different, like metal being dragged across metal. Something desperate. I stepped toward the pile, trash bags crushed in on a shape I hadn't noticed before. A rectangular outline scratched and dented, coated in filth. I kicked the top bag off, then another. That's when I saw the bars. A crate. I yanked at the plastic, cut my glove open on glass. Beneath it all, the metal door was bent inward like something had been trying to push out. Inside, curled in the corner, barely breathing, was a German shepherd puppy, maybe 5 months old. Pure white, but smeared in gray sludge and blood from where she'd clawed herself raw, trying to escape. Her name wasn't on a tag. There was no food, no water, just a shallow aluminum dish turned over and a pile of waste in the corner. But she didn't whimper, didn't bark. She just stared. I stared back. Her eyes weren't blank. They were waiting like she'd already screamed herself hoarse, and now there was nothing left but this, a last look, a silent plea. "Hey," I whispered. "Hey, girl," she blinked slowly. I could see her ribs heaving. Her legs trembled when she tried to shift. She had chewed the bars bloody. One of her front claws was cracked down the center. My stomach turned. Who locks up a German shepherd puppy like this? Then dumps her like trash? I reached for the crate latch. It snapped backward in my hand, rusted through. She didn't move. Even with the door open, she stayed huddled. I pulled off my flannel and laid it on the ground beside the crate. Then I saw it scratched into the inside wall of the crate, dug in with something sharp. A nail, a tooth, a claw, were 3 words. She's kind. I froze. It wasn't scrolled. It wasn't rushed. The letters were shaky but careful, deep enough to mark the metal like someone had made sure it would be found. A message, a warning, a memory. I didn't know. She looked at me again, not flinching, not crying, just waiting. "My name is David. I've worked sanitation in Fresno for over 20 years. I've seen people throw away everything. TVs, wedding dresses, baby shoes, boxes of old letters. But never this. Never someone who knew how to love left behind in a cage." I lifted the crate gently, but it groaned under its own rust. Harley. That's what I started calling her right then, because something in me knew she deserved a name. Didn't resist. She didn't struggle or bark. She didn't even whine. Just kept those enormous eyes locked on me like she was still trying to figure out if I was just another person here, to look and walk away. The heat was rising fast. The smell of sour milk and engine oil clung to everything. I set the crate in the shade of the loader and opened the gate wider. "You can come out now," I said softly, crouching. "You're safe." But Harley didn't move. She shifted one paw, then stopped. Her nose twitched once toward the open air, then back toward the wall of the crate, the one with the words, "She's kind." It was scratched in so deep it caught the light. There was something chilling about it. Not just the message, but that someone had taken time to write it. Not spray painted, not written with marker, scratched, etched, scarred into the metal. Who? Why? Why was it about her or left by someone who knew her? I reached in and touched her paw. It was warm, dry, swollen in 2 places. The pads were split, bleeding slightly. My throat tightened. I could tell she'd spent hours trying to claw out, not minutes, hours. She must have been trapped there since yesterday, maybe longer. I called the shelter, spoke to Maria, a friend of mine who managed intake at Fresno Rescue Haven. She said they were full as always. But when I told her where I found the dog and what condition she was in, Her voice cracked. Bring her now. I carried Harley out of the crate myself. She didn't resist, but her body was stiff, muscles locked from dehydration or fear, or both. I wrapped her in my shirt carefully and strapped her into the passenger seat of my truck, like she was made of glass. As we drove through the city, I kept checking on her. She didn't take her eyes off me. Not once, no panic, no relief, just that quiet stare, like she was still watching to see if I was real. When we hit a red light, I glanced down and whispered, "Who did this to you, girl?" Her ears flicked, but she didn't answer. The radio played some old rock ballad. I turned it off. It felt wrong. Too loud, too alive, too far from what this German shepherd puppy had just crawled out of. At the shelter, Maria met me at the door. She gasped the second she saw Harley. "Oh my God," she breathed, reaching out slowly. "What happened to you, baby girl?" "She was in a crate," I said, lifting her out of the truck. "At the dump, buried under garbage. Someone locked her in and left her there to die." Maria's hand went to her mouth. She looked like she was going to cry. "She's just a puppy," I nodded, "and someone wanted us to know something about her." "What?" I looked back toward the truck, toward the crate, still sitting in the bed. The sunlight was hitting the scratched words just right now. Clear, legible, undeniable. "She's kind." Harley didn't make a sound the entire time the vet examined her. No whimpers, no growls, no flinch when they touched her paws or ran fingers along her ribs. Just silence, like she'd learned a long time ago that crying out didn't help. "She's 5, maybe 6 months," the vet said, severely dehydrated, paw abrasions, cracked claws. No fractures, no internal bleeding, thank God. They started her on fluids right away. I stayed next to the table, one hand hovering near her head, not touching unless she invited it. But she didn't look away from me, not once. It was like she was holding on to the only familiar thing in the room. And for some reason, that thing was me. I didn't understand it. I wasn't anyone, just a guy who hauls garbage and tries to do the right thing when I can. But I felt it, that connection, that quiet thread stretched between us, invisible, but tight. "She's got some minor infections," the vet continued, "but nothing we can't treat. She's lucky." "Lucky?" I bit my tongue. Nothing about what happened to her was luck. They gave her a soft blanket and let her rest in a quiet recovery kennel. Not a cage, not with bars, just a warm, padded space with dim lighting and no noise. Still, Harley refused to lie down at first. She sat stiff and alert, eyes scanning every corner like she was expecting it all to collapse again. I watched through the glass. Maria stood beside me. "She'll need time," she said back. "This kind of trauma doesn't leave easily." "She doesn't trust doors," I muttered. "Even when they're open," Maria nodded slowly. "Most don't." We stood there a while longer, neither of us speaking. Then I told her about the message on the crate. The 3 words scratched deep into rusted metal. "She's kind," Maria blinked. "You think someone else put that there?" "I don't know," I said. "It looked deliberate, careful, a note for whoever found her. Or maybe a reminder for whoever left her," I said quietly, like they couldn't bear to throw her away without saying something. Maria's eyes filled. "That's not kindness." "I know," I said, "but it means someone saw it in her. That matters." Harley finally lay down after an hour, curling herself into the corner like a fox, one paw tucked under her nose, the other still bruised and bandaged. She didn't sleep. She just stayed still, listening. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her, about how close she came to being gone before anyone even knew she existed, about how many others don't make it. I remembered something my dad once told me after our family dog died when I was a kid. "You can't save them all, Dave, but if you can save just one, maybe that's the one who saves someone else." I looked out the window at the dark sky and whispered, "I found one," and I wasn't about to let her disappear again. The next morning, I got to the shelter before sunrise. The staff hadn't arrived yet, just me, the silence and the soft hum of AC units running through the halls. I slipped past the intake desk and made my way to the recovery room. I don't know what I expected. Maybe Harley still curled in the corner, still too afraid to move. But what I found stopped me in the doorway. She was sitting, not lying down, not cowering, sitting up, head slightly tilted, watching the glass door like she'd known I was coming. I opened it slowly. "Hey, girl," I said. Her ears twitched. She didn't stand, didn't wag her tail, but her eyes softened just a little, and she didn't look away. That was something. I sat down on the floor, cross-legged, leaving space between us. Let her decide. No leash, no coaxing, just presence. Minutes passed. Then she did something I didn't expect. She inched forward, one paw then the other. She moved like it hurt, not her body, but something deeper, like she was fighting her instincts every inch of the way. When she reached me, she didn't lick my hand or nuzzle. She just leaned, pressed the side of her face gently against my knee inside. It was the quietest sound I'd ever heard, but in that tiny breath, there was a lifetime of fear and the first sliver of trust breaking through it. This German Shepherd puppy had every reason to hate the world, to flinch, to bite, to run. Instead, she leaned. I didn't speak. I just sat there with her. Because some wounds aren't for fixing, they're for honoring. Later, when the vet checked her again, she let them touch her paws without pulling away. She didn't shake when they lifted her. Progress. Slow, fragile progress. We moved her to a larger recovery room with a window. Natural light spilled across the floor, and Harley found a spot where the sun touched her face. She lay there like it was the first warmth she'd felt in weeks. But when someone passed the door rolling a kennel on wheels, she jolted, scrambled back into the corner, pressing herself against the wall, eyes wide. She didn't bark, didn't growl. She just waited for the door to close again. That afternoon, I stayed with her while the rest of the shelter bustled with noise. Puppies yapped, food bowls clanged, volunteers chatted, but Harley stayed quiet, watching, processing. She didn't trust the sound of cages, didn't trust the sound of rolling wheels, didn't trust the scent of metal. She knew what it meant to be locked in and forgotten. That night, as the sun dipped over Fresno, I found her curled on her blanket, head resting on her front paws. I sat near the door again, and after a while she opened one eye to look at me. Not afraid, not pleading, just aware. She didn't move closer, but she didn't move away. That was enough. That was day 2 of Harley choosing not to give up. I brought her an old stuffed fox the next morning. It wasn't much, just something I'd found in the shelter's donation bin, half torn but soft, with one ear hanging by a thread. I placed it near the edge of her blanket and backed away, watching from the corner. At first, Harley didn't move. She just stared at it, then looked at me, then back at it. For a long time, nothing happened. Then she nudged it just once with her nose. Gentle testing like she couldn't believe it was hers. I saw her jaw twitch slightly, but she didn't bite down. Didn't shake it like puppies usually do. She placed her paw softly over it and held it close, resting her chin on its side. That moment broke something open in me. This German Shepherd puppy had been thrown away like trash, buried alive under bags of waste, her body torn up from clawing against steel. And yet here she was cradling a broken toy like it meant something, like it deserved gentleness. I couldn't remember the last time I saw that kind of mercy. I stepped outside to catch some air, but the sunlight burned hotter than usual. The heat pressed against my skin, dry and relentless. I looked across the yard toward the quarantine kennels, where new intakes waited their medical checks. So many eyes behind bars, so many stories I'd never know. I thought about the message again. She's kind. What if that message hadn't been for me? What if it was for her? What if someone in their final moment with her couldn't bear the thought of throwing her away without saying one good thing? What if that was all the love they had left? Or maybe I dared to believe it was her who scratched it. Maybe with cracked claws and a breaking heart, she marked those words herself. A last statement before the silence. I shook the thought. It didn't make sense. Dogs don't do that. But this German Shepherd puppy had already shattered everything I thought I knew about survival. That afternoon, Maria suggested trying Harley outside. Not into the main yard. Too loud, too chaotic, but a side patch of grass near the volunteer entrance. Quiet, shaded, controlled. We carried her out on a blanket. At first, she froze, rigid like stone. The wind touched her ears and she twitched. Then a bird chirped overhead and her head slowly turned up. I set the fox beside her. Minutes passed and then Harley took a step forward. One paw on the grass, then another. She sniffed the dirt, sat down, looked around. She didn't run, didn't hide. She just existed. And for the first time, it looked like she remembered how to breathe. Later, when I walked her back in my arms, she turned her head slightly and pressed her nose to my collar. It wasn't affection. It was acknowledgement. That night, I stayed at the shelter longer than usual, sat outside her room like listening to the soft rustle of her shifting in sleep. She hadn't barked once, hadn't made a sound, but she was speaking in her own way, and I was learning to listen. It happened during feeding. We just finished cleaning the kennels when the new intake arrived. 3 puppies, maybe 8 weeks old, scared out of their minds. They'd been picked up behind an abandoned gas station, still smelling like diesel and rain. The shelter was over capacity, so Maria had to place them temporarily in the adjacent run, just a few yards from Harley's recovery space. At first, I thought she didn't notice. She was lying by the window again, head on her paws, eyes half closed in the sunlight. The stuffed fox was beside her, its ear now entirely gone, but still pressed close like it was part of her. But then the puppies began to cry, high-pitched, panicked whimpers. Harley's head snapped up, her body stiffened. She looked toward the source of the sound, and I saw something shift in her, a flash of memory maybe. Her breathing quickened. She stood up, trembling. Then she backed into the farthest corner of the room. Not like before, not frozen. She was retreating. I entered quietly, crouched low. "It's okay," I whispered. "They're just babies." But she didn't hear me. She was somewhere else. Her eyes locked on the other kennel, the one with the crying pups, and then to the rolling cart beside it. A metal crate, empty, gleaming. She bolted. It wasn't fast, just frantic, clumsy, wide-eyed, trying to push herself behind the shelving unit as if disappearing could make it stop. "Harley," I said softly but firmly, moving toward her. She scraped her paw against the wall, searching for something, anything to hide behind. Her body trembled like she was back inside that rusted cage again. Back in the dark, back under the garbage, back where sound meant danger and light meant nothing. I stopped moving, sat on the floor, let her see I wasn't chasing her. "I'm not putting you back in a cage," I said. "I promise." She blinked slowly. Her breathing slowed by a fraction, but her legs stayed stiff, tail tucked tight. She didn't believe me, and honestly, I didn't blame her. This German Shepherd puppy had every reason to run from the smell of steel, the sound of hinges, the memory of crying behind metal bars. I could see it in her face. She wasn't reacting to the present. She was reliving the past. Later, Maria came to sit with me in the hallway. "We may need to start trauma conditioning," she said gently. If she doesn't learn to tolerate cages, she might never be adoptable." I looked through the glass. Harley had curled in on herself again. Not asleep, just folded like something brittle and hollowed out. "She doesn't need another cage." I said she needs a corner, a space that's hers. Maria sighed. "That's not how most shelters work." "I'm not most shelters." That evening, I took apart a spare kennel with bolt cutters and used soft fencing to build Harley a space by the window. No roof, no bars, just a gentle frame with blankets and the fox. She watched me work the whole time, still trembling, still uncertain, but she didn't hide again. And when it was finished, she stepped into it voluntarily, laid down in the sun. And for the first time since I met her, she closed her eyes. She chose her own corner. She chose rest. I came in early again the next morning, just to see if she was still there. Not physically, emotionally. Because with dogs like Harley, healing wasn't a straight line. It wasn't a checklist. It was a heartbeat-to-heartbeat choice, and some days it could vanish as quickly as it came. But when I pushed open the door to the recovery room, I saw her exactly where I left her. Curled in the sun, head resting on her fox, eyes slowly blinking awake like the night hadn't taken anything from her. She saw me, and this time she wagged her tail. It wasn't much, just a few small thumps against the blanket, but it was everything. I crouched near the edge of her space and waited. No command, no treat, just presence. She stood, stretched, and walked to me. 3 careful steps. Then she sat inches away and tilted her head up. I didn't cry, but something in me cracked open. This German Shepherd puppy, who had once been thrown away in a crate, silenced by steel and suffocated by fear, had just asked to be seen. And I saw her. "Good morning," I whispered. I reached out my hand slowly, palm up. She placed her paw on it. The bandages had come off the night before, and her cracked pads were healing, pink and fragile, but no longer bleeding. Her claws were still uneven, some jagged from the crate's metal, but I noticed she wasn't hiding them anymore. Maybe because she no longer felt like she needed to use them. Later that day, the shelter got a visit from a school group, 10-year-olds from a local elementary here, to learn about animal care. Normally, dogs like Harley wouldn't be part of that. Too unpredictable, too fragile. But I asked Maria for a moment. "Let me try," I said. "Just 5 minutes." We set up chairs outside near the shaded garden space. Harley had never been in a group, never heard that many voices at once. But she didn't flinch. She stood beside me, close but calm, her ears twitching as the kids sat. One girl, dark hair, quiet, nervous, asked if she could pet her. I glanced at Harley, waited, and then Harley walked forward. Not to the loudest kid, not to the ones reaching hands, to the girl who hadn't moved. She sat in front of her and tilted her head again. The girl slowly reached out and placed her palm gently on Harley's neck. No barking, no trembling, just warmth. The other kids went quiet. And in that quiet, Harley did something none of us expected. She leaned into the girl softly, willingly, trusting. Maria stood at the doorway, eyes wide. "Is she ready for the main yard?" she whispered. I looked at Harley, this German shepherd puppy who had once feared every sound, every door, every human shadow, and watched her nose twitch in the breeze as kids smiled around her. "No," I said. "She's not ready. She's already leading." That afternoon, I walked Harley through the shelter yard for the first time. No leash, no crate, just the two of us, one step at a time, beneath the faded Fresno sky. The grass was patchy, and the chain-link fences clanged in the breeze. But Harley didn't freeze. She didn't cower. She walked beside me, her pace slow, deliberate, like she was choosing this moment as carefully as she chose to breathe again. We passed by kennels filled with barking dogs. Some jumped, some wed, some just stared. Harley didn't react to the noise, but when we reached the last kennel, one with a shivering terrier pup curled in the corner, she stopped. Her ears perked, her eyes locked on the small body behind the bars. I waited. She stepped forward. Not close enough to scare, not so fast as to startle, just enough. She sat down in front of the kennel and stared, head tilted slightly. The little terrier looked up, then crept forward, inch by inch, until his nose touched the bars. Harley didn't move. She just was like, she understood because she did. This German shepherd puppy had once waited in silence for someone, anyone, to notice her. And now here she was, becoming that someone for another. I crouched beside her. "You okay?" I asked softly. Her tail tapped the ground once, then again. Later, we sat beneath the sycamore tree near the back fence. Harley lay beside me, the fox toy between her paws. The ear was gone at the seam splitting, but she still held it like it mattered, because to her it did. It had been hers when she had nothing, and that made it sacred. "You know," I said, "when I was a kid, we had a shepherd named Lacey, white like you. My dad rescued her from the side of the highway. She never left our porch after that. Never needed a leash. She just knew where she belonged." Harley looked up at me, blinking. "I think you're the first dog I've met since her that listens without a sound." I continued, not just to words, but to things that don't have any. She stretched, paws forward, belly to grass, and let out a soft sigh. For a second, I imagined her back in that crate, alone, buried under trash, waiting. That could have been the end. Would have been if not for the scratch of metal and a paw reaching through the dark. She should have been gone, but instead she was here, breathing, healing, teaching. And in that quiet patch of grass, Harley looked more alive than any creature I'd ever seen. That night, Maria called me. "I just got a message." She said, "A woman wants to meet Harley. Said she read our post and thinks maybe she's the right dog for her daughter, but she asked something strange." "What?" she said. Does she really say nothing and still make others feel safe? I looked out at the stars over my yard where Harley now slept near the porch. She says everything, I whispered. You just have to know how to listen. The woman arrived the next morning. Her name was Claw, mid-30s, quiet voice, wore a loose sweater even in the Fresno heat. And beside her walked a girl, maybe 10, hair tied in a messy braid, sleeves pulled over her hands. She didn't speak, didn't even glance up when we greeted them. This is Lily, Claire said softly. She doesn't talk much. Not since the accident. I nodded. They followed me through the sidey yard, past the kennels and the garden path Harley had walked a 100 times by now. I could feel Claire watching everything nervously, protectively. Lily trailed behind her like a shadow. I stopped by the open space near the trees. You can sit here, and I said, I'll bring her out. Claire hesitated. She doesn't do well with barking. We tried a therapy dog once. It was too much. This won't be like that, I said. I promise. When I opened the door to Harley's room, she was already up. Not pacing, not anxious, just waiting like she knew. I knelt beside her. You ready, girl? She licked the fox once gently, then stood and followed me out, her steps steady and calm. As we approached, Claire straightened. Lily tensed. Harley paused several feet away, then slowly lay down in the grass. No rush, no noise, just presence. Lily's eyes flicked toward her, then away. Harley didn't move. She didn't inch closer, didn't beg. She just waited, her tail resting flat behind her, ears alert but relaxed. Minutes passed. Claire whispered, Should I? I held up a hand. Let her do it. And then Lily moved, one step, then another. Her shoes crunched softly in the grass. Her hands stayed tucked in her sleeves. Her eyes never fully left the ground. She reached Harley's side, paused. Harley turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge her, but didn't rise. Lily sat for a moment. They didn't touch, just breathed the same air, shared the same silence. Then Lily reached out and touched Harley's back, and Harley leaned in. It was like watching two ghosts find each other in a world too loud to hear them. Claire pressed her fingers to her mouth. I felt something hard crack open in my chest because this German Shepherd puppy, once locked in a rusted crate and buried in trash, now sat as still as a prayer beside a girl who hadn't spoken in 6 months. And then Lily whispered one word soft. Claire gasped. I swallowed hard. Harley didn't react. She stayed where she was, but her tail moved once, slow and quiet. The rest of the shelter seemed to fade. No barking, no heat. Just two survivors breathing together in the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. That day, Lily stayed for over an hour, didn't speak again. But when they left, she turned and looked back. Not at me, at Harley. And Harley watched her go, still silent, still soft. A week passed. Lily and Claire visited every day. Same time, same bench near the trees. Each visit was quiet, unhurried. There were no commands, no tricks, no expectations. Just Harley lying beside the girl and Lily slowly, gently returning to the world one fingertip at a time. On day 3, Lily whispered a second word. Stay, and Harley did. On day 5, she brought a drawing crayon on lined paper, a white dog with a pink nose and a toy fox in its mouth. She handed it to me without a word, then walked straight to Harley and laid beside her in the grass. Harley tucked her head beneath Lily's arm. This German Shepherd puppy, once abandoned in a rusted cage, scarred and silent, was now anchoring a child back to herself without noise, without force, just presence. And then came the day we didn't expect. A family arrived at the shelter. Parents, 2 kids looking to adopt. They had seen Harley on the shelter's website and wanted to meet her. Maria looked at me with worry in her eyes. She's technically available, she said. We never promised her to Claire. I walked outside and found Harley under the tree again, Lily's hand resting on her back. Her sleeves were still long, but her body looked less curled, less folded in. She was opening. Claw, I said carefully. Another family wants to meet her. Claire's face went pale. Of course, you have to do what's best. She's not mine to give, I said. But I think she already chose. We let the visiting family meet Harley anyway, gave them a tour, let them offer treats. She accepted them politely, sat when asked, let their youngest boy pet her ears, but every time her eyes drifted back to the tree, to Lily she was present but not connected, polite but distant. And then, when it was time to go, the boy leaned in suddenly to hug her neck, quick and rough. Harley flinched, not violently, just enough. A slight pull, a look of uncertainty, and Lily saw it. She stood, walked forward, and without a word knelt beside Harley and touched her cheek. Harley turned instantly, curling toward her. The boy stepped back. The parents saw it, and they knew. Later, they said thank you and quietly withdrew their application. That evening, Maria approached me outside Harley's room. She made her choice, didn't she? I nodded. She's not just a therapy dog, I said. She's a mirror. Maria looked at me. She shows people exactly what they need to see, I continued. Whether that's love or silence or the pain they've been trying to hide. Inside, Harley lay curled at Lily's feet while the girl read softly from a picture book. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to because I was watching a puppy who once clawed messages into metal walls, now listening to the voice of a child who had forgotten how to speak. They were healing each other, and there is no cage on earth that could hold that kind of bond. Harley went home the next day. We packed her things, her blanket, her medical papers, a new harness, and of course, the fox. I almost didn't include it. It was torn nearly to pieces now, barely held together by threads and dried slobber. But when I tried to leave it behind, Harley walked back, picked it up herself, and dropped it at Lily's feet. That fox had been with her through everything, and now it would follow her home. Claire signed the adoption papers with shaking hands. I didn't think we'd be ready for this, she said quietly. But Lily, she hasn't stopped smiling since yesterday. Lily stood beside her, one hand on Harley's back, the other gripping the drawing she'd made, now folded and worn, but still showing that same white dog, still holding that same pink-eared fox. Harley didn't pull on the leash. She didn't resist. She walked out of the shelter with calm steps, ears forward, eyes alert. But just before the door closed behind her, she turned her head. She looked at me, and I swear she knew. She knew this place had been a stop, not an end. She knew this journey had broken her, but it hadn't buried her. She knew that someone, somewhere, had once scratched 3 words into a metal wall and left her for dead. But she wasn't dead. She was kind. The staff stood on the porch, watching her go. Maria wiped her eyes. One of the new volunteers whispered, "Is that the crate puppy?" I nodded. Not anymore. Because she wasn't the puppy in the crate. Not the ghost at the landfill. Not the broken thing left under garbage. She was Harley now. She was a friend, a guide, a voice for someone who didn't know how to speak. A week later, Claire sent us a video. Lily was sitting on her bedroom floor, reading aloud from a book. Harley was lying beside her, head on the girl's lap, eyes closed. The caption read, "She's found her voice because of Harley." I watched that video 3 times before I could breathe, right? Because sometimes it's not about saving a dog. Sometimes it's about the dog who saves someone else. And this German Shepherd puppy, who had every reason to disappear, became a beacon. Not with barking, not with tricks, just with presence, just by staying. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. Harley was thrown away like trash, locked in a crate and buried beneath the weight of the world. She could have disappeared quietly, silently, forgotten like so many others. But she didn't. She waited. She endured. She held on. Not to rage, but to kindness. Somewhere someone once scratched 3 words into the wall of her cage. She's kind. Maybe it was a child. Maybe someone who couldn't fight for her, but needed the world to know. Or maybe in the silence, in the claw marks and blood, it was Harley herself, whom she never stopped living up to it. Because kindness doesn't have a bark. It doesn't need a leash. It waits patiently in the corner until someone scared reaches out, and then it stays. Harley became more than a rescued German Shepherd puppy. She became a protector of the quiet, a guardian of the timid, a voice for a little girl who had lost hers. If her story moved you, please don't let it stop here. Every share, every comment, every voice raised in support helps us rescue the next Harley, the next soul waiting in the dark for a second chance. Don't forget to subscribe our channel.